we learned out of Victoria is how swiftly a government does need to respond in light of the circumstances, because if you go hard and early, you should hopefully, and I say hopefully, contain any spread. What happened in Victoria was a slight delay and a bit prolonged, and as a consequence, there was a huge tail or legacy effect where, in the end, the state government had to go hard and long. So my hope is that the South Australian government continues to be diligent on top of it and to stress to South Australians how critical it is that they participate early, because it can stop a long tail and much harsher measures later.
Absolutely. And Peter, in terms of hotel quarantine, is it fair to say that there has been a bungle in both states?
We're getting a report very soon in Victoria, and we will see what happened in South Australia. I don't think it's useful for people to be talking about bungles. I think that what we all need to do is to support South Australia to, as Tim says, get this under control and get it under control quickly. And I would expect that the South Australian government has learnt from the lessons in New South Wales with the Ruby Princess and in Victoria, and will use those lessons to contain this as quickly as possible for the people that live in Adelaide and South Australia, and of course for all the rest of us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And fingers crossed, there's certainly cautious optimism at this stage. What about the reaction from states and territories to this? Yesterday, the Health Minister said that the decision to shut state borders to South Australians was inconsistent with medical advice. Tim, was it appropriate for these jurisdictions to shut up shop, particularly WA? They've closed their border entirely to South Australia. Was it a knee-jerk reaction?
Well, my deference is always to keep borders, domestic borders open. But ultimately, it's up to state premiers to respond in kind. I would just suggest that we need to do it proportionally. I've said consistently since the start of this crisis, we need sustainable measures that trust and respect Australians to be able to take responsibility. Now, we know the latency of this virus makes some people's detection of it longer than we would otherwise hope. But we may have to continue living with minor outbreaks, and we hope this is minor, on an ongoing basis. And the solution isn't just to erect borders at the first instance of any detection. We have to make informed decision-making by states, because we need the country and the economy, of course, to keep operating. So I'm nervous about such swift responses. I understand why people are nervous, but it has to be informed by evidence.
Well, I guess we'll find out what happens there. And we are, of course, only weeks away from Christmas, and I'm sure there's a number of loved ones that do want to be reunited. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Yeah. Let's move on now. The opposition, Peter, we'll start with you on this, because Anthony Albanese's Deputy Chief of Staff has resigned after reportedly an anonymous malicious attack against her was posted online. Is there a culture issue in the Labor Party?
No, and look, I have two things to say about that. I think that anyone who was involved in writing and publishing and distributing an anonymous malicious attack on a staffer should be ashamed of themselves, and particularly given that the woman in question, because it was reported, has now made it clear to everyone that she has been struggling with her mental health. I don't think that people should be talking about her and what happened, and that she should be respected and be allowed to get on with her life.
Peter, would you like to see an investigation into this?
I have read what the Deputy Chief of Staff has said publicly about what has occurred. And I think that, as I said, this is not a matter that should be talked about and aired over and over again when she has said that her mental health was affected and has been affected. And I think that anyone who was involved in it should be ashamed, as I said, of spreading malicious rumours without putting their names to it. And even if they had have put their names to it, it's just not an appropriate thing to do.
Tim, we know in recent weeks there's been discussions about the treatment of particularly of women in Parliament. Is this another example of a cultural issue?
Well, I can't speak to it because the allegations are made anonymously, though I'm surprised Peter is saying she doesn't believe there should be an investigation into what seems to be workplace bullying. I've said consistently...
That's not what I said.
In the context of the allegations put forward by the Four Corners, and of course here, that if there is a claim that's brought forward, that it should be properly investigated regardless, because we need to make sure that Parliament is a safe workplace for women, for all Australians, because people should be able to go into any workplace in this country and feel respected and treated with dignity. And if anyone's falling short, then that's the natural consequence. We need to make sure that it's properly addressed. But in terms of, on a day-to-day basis, I don't see a cultural problem within the Parliament, but I'm not going to, I don't know what's going on inside Anthony Albanese's office, but obviously there's at least some disquiet within the opposition, which has led to at least people, and I'd say probably gutlessly, but nonetheless putting forward, taking a swipe and seemingly bullying a staff member.
And just, can I just make it clear, Tim slightly verbaled me there. What I have said is that this is a matter for the people who are involved, and they will deal with it. And I don't want to be part of a pile-on about the Deputy Chief of Staff and anonymous people who have distributed something, and then others who have chosen fit to report on it.
But politely, I didn't verbally. You asked a question about whether you wanted to investigate it, and I said that if there's any allegations of bullying, that they should be investigated. And I would have thought you should be able to say
for the people in. If people want to report things that have happened to them, like happened with the woman who has made allegations of bullying against Minister Cash, then they will go to the Department of Finance, and I absolutely support that. I absolutely support safe workplaces. I absolutely support that, and I've said this a number of times last week, that we need to have a culture where everyone feels safe in the workplace, and those of us who are members of Parliament and privileged to be members of Parliament need to lead by example and make sure that the culture is a good culture for men and for women. But as we saw, and we all debated a lot last week with the allegations that came out on Four Corners, particularly for women, they need to feel that they can work in politics and not have to worry about how they'll be treated.